Thank you. Hello, and welcome to a wine-filled special episode of the Wet Palate Podcast. I am your host, Brenda Poprichkin. Today, I am so honored to have a very special guest in the studio, Executive Vice President of Château Angélus of Saint-Émilion, Yves de Launay. Welcome. Yay!
Good morning, Brenda. Thank you very much for having me.
Good morning. I may or may not be having wine this morning. What do you think?
We'll see. I think we're going to have a glass of wine. It's a good time to test,
But how do I go back to real life if I have wine right now? I have to start by saying this was my favorite bottle last year. I was blessed to have it several times, and I enjoyed the 2010 New Year's Eve. Spectacular. This is not his first venture representing luxury goods and wines. Yves has worked with Cheval Blanc, Krug, Dom Pérignon, and Cartier. You know, just a few. You hold a master's degree in agronomy, specializing in international trade as well as viticulture and enology. What first led you to agronomy?
It's interesting, actually. I grew up in Paris, so far from the countryside, but always had a passion for the countryside and loved, being in the outdoor. And at home, we always had wine on the table, and that's really how slowly I developed some interest. And then I did some scientific, studies and specialized progressively in wine and spirits and enology and viticulture. So that was really my academic background, and that's how it started.
What is your earliest memory of having that aha moment with a glass of wine, and what was it?
I guess it was probably, believe it or not, in New York. I was actually a student at the time. I was doing an internship, and I was working for the Bordeaux Wine Bureau, and I was lucky enough on the weekend to go to one auction, and I was actually going to the pre-auction testing, and I was just having this incredible bottle of wine that I was certainly not able to afford at the time.
But rare wine, what led you to that event?
Because
the normal person does not wake up and say, I'm going to go to an auction today.
No, but I because I was part of the Bordeaux Wine Bureau, I had the connection to be able to be part of those pre-auction, although I wasn't bidding, but just to be there and get a chance to test this incredible wine. And actually, we were also lucky to be able to save some bottles at the end that were not finished and keep them and bring them and enjoy them in restaurants. So that's really how I started to have an appreciation for the finest wines. And realize that how not only it can give you pleasure, but can give you emotion when you have really like this incredible bottle of wine that has the proper aging and the right condition.
And what was it?
It was actually, I remember specifically a vertical that we did of Grand Cru in Bordeaux of 1966, and it was just phenomenal experience. And at the time, for me, it was much older than I was, and that I always gotta keep this memory, when I was in my 20s and enjoying this vertical testing.
That'll do it. How did the connection with Château Angélus happen to where you are today?
It was actually, we were introduced by a common friend, someone who is also working in the industry, and Stéphanie was, she clearly, Stéphanie de Boüard is the 8th generation of the family de Boüard, and she's the one running the chateau since 2012. And she really had a clear vision, on how she wanted to develop Château Angélus. And so we were introduced, and she explained to me this vision, and she was looking for someone, in best in the U.S. to support this vision in the Americas, in this part of the world. And so we started to discuss, and we exchanged, and I discussed a possible roadmap of what it could look like, to carry this vision that she had, and we realized that we were perfectly aligned. And then a month after, pretty much, we were just starting to work together, and I, working and trying to carry on, this vision that she has for the chateau.
Speaking of, describe the winery. Let's dive into, as you mentioned, the multi-generational history and ownership of Château Angélus.
Yes, so the winery, first and foremost,
Yeah.
it's a winery which is owned by a family, which is rare in Bordeaux. It has been within the same family, the family de Boüard, for about 240 years, slightly more. And today, Stéphanie de Boüard is running the chateau. She's the 8th generation. She took over from her father, Hubert, in 2012. And really, it's a unique characteristic because they not only they own the chateau, but they're also wine owner and winemaker. So they are in the vineyard, they are also in the cellars, covering all aspects of the winery. So I think that's the first characteristic. Then the second characteristic, I would say, is it's a winery that has it's a chateau that has an exceptional terroir. And obviously that's very important to start with. And with that terroir, obviously, is what you do with it, and so the people that are on the winery and how they can leverage this terroir. And so all these generations, and more especially Hubert, since he joined the chateau in the early 80s, and then Stéphanie, really had a quest for excellence in everything that they do. And this terroir is very unique. It's a terroir that we believe is great for a grape of Cabernet Franc. So that's really, and I'm sure we will get a chance to talk about it, but that's the signature of our wines, this high proportion of Cabernet Franc, which gives a very specific style of wine and a signature for Angélus.
Which is probably why I love it so much. Stéphanie de Boüard, as you mentioned, she's made some exciting additions and expansions since taking over to the winery, like the farms, as you briefly mentioned, but I want to get a little more into it as to why the farm is important, the additional wineries, the jump to hospitality with a couple of restaurants recognized by the Michelin Guide, and even a hotel. Not exciting at all. Again, she sounds fierce, and as you, I think, mentioned, the third woman to run the estate in the past 250 years. Tell us more.
Absolutely, yes. So incredible. And Stéphanie, when she arrived in 2012, there were 30 people on the winery, and we had these iconic wines that she took over from her father, but she really expanded in many different directions. She expanded, as you mentioned, in hospitality with the addition of 2 Michelin star restaurants, one in Saint-Émilion called Le Gabriel, and another one in Saint-Émilion called Le Logis L'Acadène. She also, in addition of these 2 restaurants, acquired 3 boutique hotels, which are based in Saint-Émilion, charming village that I really encourage you to visit. And to complete this kind of ecosystem, she also acquired a farm in 2019 that supply the restaurants and others. So there's all these different aspect now of the around the wine of Angélus, and the group or the chateau that has 30 people when she arrived now has over 150 people, so quite an expansion. She also actually tripled the size of the vineyards. She built, as you hinted, 2 different cellars, a specific cellar for Carillon d'Angélus, referred often as the second wine of Angélus, and another one which is about to be completed for Angélus at the chateau. So quite a lot of expansion, and to create around the name of Angélus this ecosystem based around this excellence, the quality, the craftsmanship, the art de vivre also, the art of hosting, and that's really something that corresponds to the value of the family.
It's really a whole world now.
It's
its own
not
world.
a whole world, but it's obviously quite comprehensive. Yes.
Yeah, I like it. Let's discuss the consistency and sustainability of the unique character, as you mentioned, that comes from the south-facing slope of Saint-Émilion, the high proportion of Cabernet Franc you briefly mentioned, and the perfectly balanced distribution of limestone and clay in its soils, making it rich, dense, elegant, pedigreed, pure, and fresh, a word I know you use often.
It's exactly, freshness is important. It's a lot of different aspects or elements in your questions. Certainly, Château Angélus has adopted a highly eco-responsible approach. Started the process of certification of our vineyards. That was in 2018. We learned a lot from it, and we kind of adapted it to, based on our own conditions. And we can summarize it in 3 areas, pretty much. The first one is to make sure that we bring life to the soil. That means having, grass cover crops in the rows, the decompacting of the soil without being too technical, and also using both tradition and modernity. So, for instance, we both use electric tractors as well as horses, which depending on the location of the vineyard. The second thing is to enhance biodiversity, so having hedgerows around, for instance, the vineyards. And last, also using certain vineyards practices, like the pruning, this kind of aspect, crop thinning, and so on, to really, have this sustainable approach. So, just on this sustainability, the chateau has built its own approach, its own path, to be highly responsible in everything we do. So not only actually at the chateau, but also in our restaurants, in our farm, and so on. Now you mentioned the Cabernet Franc and the soil that we have. The terroir is actually quite key. Cabernet Franc is our signatures, as I was mentioning before. For Angélus, Cabernet Franc is about 50% of the vineyards, so quite high. And we love this grape because, first of all, we have the right terroir for it. In terms of soil, you are mentioning the clay. So with the clay, actually, we have clay that we have for the Merlot, the blue clay, which is quite famous in Pomerol and Saint-Émilion on the right bank of Bordeaux. And we have the limestone for the Cabernet Franc. Cabernet Franc is a grape that we love, a grape that the Hubert has always, and his ancestor actually also loved, because it brings some spiciness, it brings some freshness, it brings some tension to the wine. And that's what we feel, allowed the wine to keep some elegance and be enjoyable, at a different stage of their lives. So Cabernet Franc is really our signature.
It really is. Excuse me. Tell me about, as I was researching, I heard you talk about the salt balloons.
Yes, that's an interesting. Interesting.
Had to rewind. What did he just say?
That's an interesting one, actually. It's true that nowadays we have a lot of climate change, as we know. So we are facing all kind of episodes where we have to adapt in the vineyards, and hail can be one of them. And to fight or combat hail, we have a way to send some balloons in the clouds, and these balloons have sodiums, and they explode within the cloud, and they pretty much transform the ice into water. It's totally sustainable, but that's a way also to prevent hail to destroy vineyards. Sometimes, and more especially last year, for instance, in some part of Bordeaux, some of the vineyards have been destroyed. 40% of the vineyards have been destroyed, and the harvest has been destroyed by hail. So that's a way to combat it. In the same way, when you have frost, we have this big wind turbine that allows to mix the air and avoid, the buds to be frozen and lose the harvest. And also putting candles in the vineyard. So there's always some ways to, adapt the climatic condition in order to produce the best possible grape at the harvest. And ultimately, 80% of the job is done at harvest. So the key is really to make sure that you have healthy grapes with the right ripeness, the right freshness and acidity, pH, and phenolic also concentration. So that's all this element that that the team is trying to optimize, and by working in the vineyards. The rest is not easy, but it's if you don't have the right raw material at harvest time, then it's more difficult obviously to produce a great wine.
And you also said, because the vines are old, right? 40 years old, they're able to naturally, like you said, a healthy person, right, can actually overcome getting sick.
Absolutely,
easier.
It's very true, and it's actually also one of the assets that we have at the chateau. Is the vineyard has been there for a long time. I was talking about these generations. We have vines actually that are in average 40 years old, as you were mentioning. Some of them are actually up to 100 years old. Some of the oldest one that you can find in Saint-Émilion. And it's true that a healthy vine will have, and more especially at that age, will have some deeper root system. And so in case of heat or drought,
Right.
it would really go deeper in the soil and get some water and all the elements that's needed. On the contrary, if we have excessive rain, which can happen as well, it will avoid the roots to be saturated. The fact also that Angélus is some kind of amphitheaters, on the hills you have the Merlot, and so when it rains, a lot of the rain actually drains and don't necessarily go inside the soil. So that's part of the terroir. But it's true that the terroir, in addition to the age of the vine, really contribute to produce our wine.
And being able to naturally fight off sometimes, depending on what the conditions are. Going back to, I just remembered, going back to Stephanie and her wines, and the wines, I had also read how she's very specific about having a second label and having it not, so it doesn't feel like that's just like less, like grapes that are not as good, to make a second label, but a second label that stands on its own. Tell me a little bit more
absolutely.
about that.
That's something which is really, it was a strong decision that Stéphanie made when she arrived. Traditionally in Bordeaux, you have the second wine, you make the Grand Vin, and you make your best, possible, the best possible wine. And whatever you don't really want to keep for the Grand Vin, you repurpose it for the second wine.
Right.
That's the way it was for some time at Angélus. It doesn't mean that the second wine is not good, but it's just not,
Right.
not exactly the same. So Stéphanie didn't like this concept and decided to create our second wine called Carillon, to make it a wine which would have its own identity, its own personality. And so the first thing she did is she separated the vineyards. So we have vineyards for Angélus and we have vineyards for Carillon. Also, the style of the wine is quite different. I was mentioning, that Angélus has about 50% of Cabernet Franc and 50% of Merlot. When it comes now to Carillon, we have about 80 to 90% Merlot. The aging is slightly different as well. She, as I was mentioning, she built a separate cellar for Carillon. And all of that contributed to make a wine, the intention was to make a wine which would be much more approachable, that you can enjoy sooner, and with its own personality. So that was quite, an approach which was really quite important, when she first joined.
Tell me about the change in 2022 when leaving the Grand Cru Classe A classification and refraining from presenting the wine for classification and inclusion, possible inclusion.
Yes.
Not controversial at all.
No, it's a decision that was made by Stéphanie in agreement with her father, obviously. It's an important decision. Angélus has been part of the classification for a long time. It was a very stimulating framework. It really allowed us to be at the very top, and that has been the case for 10 years, between 2012 and 2022. At the same time, Stéphanie and her father judged the system to be a little bit too constraining and wanted to continue with their own path in order to explore different ways to make the best possible wine, to really concentrate on the wine itself and not on anything else. And that's what motivated the decision to exit or not to present the wine for the classification. We were a few other chateaus did it as well, but today it's true that after a few years, there's no regret. I think we continue to produce the best possible wine, and that didn't have any impact necessarily, on in any ways, in terms of commercially or so on. It's really, I think the way the chateau operates and the style of wine that it's producing is being recognized, and that at the end that's what matters, to really what's in the bottle and in the glass.
Absolutely. I love the prayer story of the original Three Bells logo. Can you please share it for the listeners? And the one you have here today has one One bell.
One bell, yes, absolutely. So the story, actually, the name Angélus actually is not a random name. It's coming from a prayer, as you said, and the prayer, the Angélus prayer, is a prayer from the 15th century. It's a prayer that the Pope at the time asked all the Christians to say, and to make sure that they would, say this prayer, which was 3 times a day, at 7 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 7 o'clock in the evening. All the bells in the churches were ringing. It happens that when you are at the Château Angélus, when you are in a vineyard, you are in the natural amphitheaters, and you have 3 villages around. Each of these villages has a church, and so during when the Angélus was ringing at the time, the workers in the vineyard could hear the bells ringing from these 3 different, 3 different villages and echoing each other. And so since that time, that plot in the middle of the vineyard was called Clos de l'Angélus, and then the chateau became Château Angélus, and that's why on our label you see the bell, which is really iconic for us.
And when that stopped? Certainly they don't do the 3 bells anymore now, right?
Well, the churches, the villages are still there. The churches are still there.
3 times?
They don't ring 3 times. However, if you go to the chateau, and you can see the photo behind me, if you go to the chateau, we built a carillon on top of the chateau. And so this carillon, which is a number of bells, can play music, and so we do have the Angélus playing at 7 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 7 o'clock in the evening every day.
You mean when I go to the winery, right?
When you go to.
When I go to the winery.
And you can play other music as well, which is always fun.
Amazing. And then, so this one today has 1 bell. The other label, you said it's Carillon's the one that has the 3.
Correct.
On the
Absolutely,
label.
yeah. Because carillon is actually what you find in some churches or cathedrals. It's a minimum of 23 bells by definitions. That's a carillon, and so that's why on the label we don't want to put too many bells. But that's because some are big, some are small, and they can play music. But that's why we have the 3 bells on a carillon.
Beautiful, and so the new black bottle. Talk about that. The design on that black bottle.
The 2022.
Or should we try this first?
Up to you.
No, up to you.
Well, we can certainly have a glass. So I brought with me Angélus 2014, which is a great vintage, so 10 years old. As you can see, actually, on this vintage, you have a little strip label on the bottom, and that says 30 in many different languages. The 30 represent the 30th vintage that was made by Yves de Launay. So, as you can do the calculation, Hubert obviously is still very much involved, working alongside Stéphanie. And last year, Hubert produced his 40th vintage. So we're going to test his 30th vintage.
What a great sound.
Voilà.
How do I go back to real life after this?
It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, which is the best time to test. Because your test buds are fully awake. And so this 14 is a great vintage. Only after 10 years, it's already very expressive. It's exactly 50-50% Merlot and Cabernet Franc.
Cabernet Franc.
And it's a vintage which was not an easy one because the summer was a bit tricky. But it's a vintage that we gave the name of the Indian because we had a beautiful Indian summer, September and October. The chateau at the time and the team took a little bit of risk. They waited until October to test, start harvesting. And so the harvest started in October 2nd and finished in October 22nd. So quite late, but the conditions were perfect. And the lack of maturation that we had, if you want, in the summertime, were compensated, in September and October, thanks to this beautiful Indian summer. Cheers.
Cheers. The bell.
The bell.
Do that again because I got a little bit of cork.
So now back to the 22 vintage with the new bottle. It's first of all, we call this vintage 22 the majestic, le majestueux in French. That's a vintage that's going to be a vintage you want to have in your cellars. It's a vintage that already shows the perfect harmony, that has the complexity, the elegance.
After the 15. After the 15.
After the 15.
Another bottle you want to have in your cellar is the 15, right?
The fifth was how many bottles you want to have?
As many. Have them all.
Many bottles. But this 22 is certainly one of them. And Stéphanie, like she did in 2012 when she arrived, decided to do a different presentation to mark a little bit the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one, the cycle being 10 years. And so she was inspired by high jewelry and craftsmanship. And so there's no label, like it was the case in 2012. But instead what you have some precious material. You have enamel, you have gold, and you have also mother of pearl. On top of it, you have a design that represents different planets, kind of a revolution, just symbolizing the beginning of this, or the end of this cycle and the beginning of a new one. So quite a stunning bottle, quite different from everything else that, we normally do. And that's actually now been available since the beginning of the year in the US.
I was watching an episode of Somme. I think it was Somme TV.
Somme TV, yes.
I think is that, and then there was the camera pans to all these Angélus bottles, and I said to my husband, "Wait a minute, pause that. I've never seen that black bottle. Have you seen that black bottle? This is it's a semi-new episode, right? Like I think maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, less than that. Yeah, probably in the fall actually. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I had to rewind, and I said, so we started looking for it. What is this black bottle?
It's pretty striking. Yeah, it's
really
very
is.
different. Yeah, it's a nice presentation, but beyond just the nice, good-looking bottle,
right,
the wine is actually an extraordinary wine that has been extremely well received by the trade and the professional, and now also by the consumers.
So one of the things that we often discuss with our friends is you're saying, right, so 22. So my first instinct was, let's buy this. This is a great collector bottle, right, because we have to wait before we drink it. And then the answer is always like, well, we're too old to start buying bottles and wait 20 years to drink it, right? So in this case for us, it's kind of, okay, maybe to collect it. But on that note, it's a little bit also controversial about enjoying a Bordeaux sooner rather than later, and the Angélus philosophy on that, because I know that a lot of things are, you don't look down on having something a little earlier than those. So collecting versus enjoying.
Yes, I think we like both. I do think the style of wine that we produce more and more actually can actually answer the two needs. So you can enjoy some of our wines at an early stage, if you will, but you can also keep them for a long time. This 2014 is a good example, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The key for the team is to, you say in retail you have location. For the wines, the motto of Yves de Launay is harmony. So you want to make sure that you have harmonious wine, and that you find the perfect balance for a wine that would have structure and power, but also elegance. And that's really also where Stéphanie got involved a lot as well, in order to bring some nuances, allowing the wine to have this elegance, this finesse, and to be able to be enjoyed a bit sooner. For a long time, wines in Bordeaux, generally speaking, were a little bit tannic, where the wood was very much, present, and that was preventing you to really have an enjoyable, tasting until quite a long time. I think that has changed. I think, as far as we're concerned, with some of the changes that have been made, what Stéphanie de Boüard calls the pixelization, the little nuances in the way of making wine that allow the wine to be enjoyed much sooner. If you test today the 2019, for instance, which is a fairly recent vintage, only 5 years, you will be surprised. The wine is very enjoyable. The tannins that comes from the wood or that comes from the...
And you're still using 100% French oak?
Yes, but some of the there's been an evolution on the cask that are used for the Cabernet Franc specifically.
The barrels.
The barrel, exactly. These barrels, the Cabernet Franc doesn't need as much wood as the Merlot, and so we are now using a large proportion of what we call the foudre. Foudre has larger wood barrel that don't give as much wood, therefore, to the wine, but also allow more oxygenation, more aromatic expression, and that's really what contributes to give this freshness and this elegance to Angélus at the earlier stage. So 2019 I was mentioning, or even the 2016, for instance, recently, fairly young vintages. You can open the wine now, you can decant it, and really have a fantastic time. No question, you can keep it for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It will still have this elegance, this complexity, and remains and keeping some freshness, which is really what you want. You were mentioning to me earlier that you had a 1995, which is a vintage I personally love very much.
Yeah.
And you can probably tell me more about your experience, but I do believe that 95 is great because you have this evolution of aromas, where you have the secondary aromas, tertiary aromas, but at the same time you also have this freshness, and that's, I think,
and that's what's so surprising, right? Because you don't expect it to still be so fresh. But I think the beauty of this is not to snub drinking something too early. The beauty of it is hopefully being blessed enough to try it at different stages. Where I'm having a 2014 now, and I had the 95 last year.
Exactly, and you can enjoy the 2014. I think the 2014 is already in a very good place, in this phase where it's starting to be very expressive. And we didn't decant the wine.
Yeah.
It's a wine which, with some food, which would really shine and sing in the glass. So it's
I agree.
It's a special bottle of wine, but it's only 10 years. I mean, I don't think that for a lot of people they expect a much longer aging to have wine that can give you this kind of pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. On that note, on that beautiful singing note, let's talk about the different categories offered at the estate.
At the chateau,
Yeah.
Absolutely. We produce quite a few wine. Obviously, the flagship wine, our grand vin, as we call it, is Angélus. That's a wine which is, as we were mentioning, a very high proportion of Cabernet Franc. There's one wine I like to mention also, which is a tiny production. It's produced with oldest vines, which are the one I was mentioning, which can be 100 years old. It's called Hommage à Elisabeth Boucher. So 100% Cabernet Franc, very unique and quite exceptional. We only make it in the great vintages or in the exceptional vintages, and that's something which is very allocated, as you can imagine, but interesting to test. We talked about Carillon, often referred as a second wine, but really having its own personality with a high proportion of Merlot, so one which is quite approachable. And the last one, which has now a few years, which is called Tempo. And Tempo, the aim of Tempo is to demystify the approach of a great wine. So it's a wine which is made by Angélus with vineyards that we own. The vineyards are about 50 minutes from Angélus and from Saint-Émilion. It's made with the expertise of our team, and that's a wine which, again, is not a pretentious wine. It's a wine that's that you don't want to think too much about when you open a bottle, that you can enjoy with all kind of foods. It's a wine also which is very, mostly on mostly Merlot based, but also that's it's quite affordable. You can find it typically under $30 a bottle in retail, and that has a great success and with a lot of different consumers. Which is good because it's also a first step quite often into the world of the wine that we are making.
How are you marketing to different generations, especially that generation that shall not be named, who supposedly looks down on wine? Product placement, tasting, social media. I know the movie, it was in Bond. It was featured in one of the James Bond.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, different ways. First of all, we don't exclude anyone. We like our wines to be enjoyed by, all kind of age or, so there's absolutely no discrimination there, clearly. I think what we just mentioned about tempo is also a way to kind of embrace, all the generation and all different kind of consumer groups, because tempo clearly give access to, to our world of the wine that we are making. We also do sometimes some testing with some younger groups. I've done recently some testing and masterclass at with some university, with some club, wine club of university. So that obviously just to kind of illustrate what our wines are, and hopefully this younger clientele can develop their own journey, because ultimately I do believe that wine is a journey, and you don't drink the same thing as in this country.
No, not everyone is 20-something going to auctions.
No, not aware. I was very fortunate. But you don't drink the same wine at 21 years old, at 30, and 40, and 50. Obviously,
that is true.
Your palate evolves. Your wallet also evolves.
Hopefully, it does.
And and you develop some. You can develop some interest and also. So that's. So we like to also talk to this younger generation, although they might not right away, be clients of Angélus, but that's fine. And you mentioned product placement. It's I have to say that it's true that Angélus has been in all the James Bond movies since 2005.
In all of them?
Yes. So in Casino Royale, in No Time to Die, and I'm missing one. I'm missing one, sorry. It will come back. And but it was not really a product placement. It is a product placement, but it was not. It's really like a relationship between the family behind James Bond, the Broccoli and the Wilson, and the De Boüard family from Angélus. And there's an appreciation, and it's been this product placement has been purely made based on the relationship and the friendship. And that's why today a lot of people have seen our wines in James Bond, because you have some famous scenes where you see the bottle of Angélus, and that's obviously helped for the general awareness of our chateau. And then
subliminal.
Subliminal not, because it's true that you have Daniel Craig and Evergreen, sharing a bottle, in the train in the Orient Express. So it's quite it's more than subliminal. You can really see it.
Depends how into you are into the scene, right? The conversation.
But that's been clearly contributed to create a little bit more awareness for Château Angélus. We also obviously available like everyone on social media. We do it with our own style, so that's how I guess we market without necessarily marketing per se, but that's how we present our wines, in all these different
right, not gimmicky.
Medium.
No, I would
never.
not expect that from
absolutely
you.
No. The style of the De Boüard family is always, again, it's excellence, but in a simple way. It's never ostentatious. Even in the hotel, where you go to the hotel, it's the art de vivre, but like the way you like to host, friends at home. So everything is done in a pretty discreet, but with a lot of attention to details, and that's really what's done in every aspect of the wine, including the marketing, which is not really marketing, to be honest.
Everything's going good. So Château Angélus isn't necessarily large production. How does the allocation work in the U.S.? What state leads in consumption? And where can one best enjoy it in South Florida? We spoke about this a little while ago.
Château Angélus is a fairly small production, as you mentioned. It's allocated. It's located on the right bank. Right bank chateau usually have smaller vineyards than the one on the left bank, and so allocation is actually start pretty early in the distribution, chain, if you will. It started really at with the négociants, as we call them, which are our first layers before putting the wines to market. And we discuss with them, kind of distribution that we want to have in terms of states, in terms of channel, and how selective we want to be. But then we don't necessarily exclude, again, anyone. But it's true that you find typically our wines in finest retails, in the country, and in a number of restaurants. We do have actually a pretty decent distribution in restaurants in Florida that allows consumers to enjoy our wines with all kind of food. So I know you're in the South Florida. Many restaurants carry our wine. In South Beach, I'm thinking of places like which I personally like in terms of food, like Mila. So a great restaurant in downtown. You can go to Lafayette. You can go to.
I just went there. Yeah.
Great food, and they have a very nice selection of Angélus. They actually serve Angélus by the glass.
That's true. They have that big.
Coravin.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's so big.
I can go to LPM also. I was mentioning LPM before. Zeru, with some Spanish food. So really all kind of foods. In Wynwood, I love pastis. And pastis, again, has a few vintages of Angélus, L'Atelier, Mandoline. I mean, there's a number of restaurants where we are, included in the wine list and where, clients can order our wines.
And I was browsing that list yesterday on your website. You have it, so it's easy to find and zone in on the area where you will be done, including the west coast of Florida. So
absolutely,
Naples, Fort Myers. I was surprised.
Naples, Fort Myers, even the north part of Florida. If you go to Panama City or Dustin, you can find our wine there. So we have. Specifically in Florida, actually, we have a fairly good distribution, and our wine can be found in a bit everywhere.
And what state leads? New York.
What state leads?
What state leads in consumption?
New York is a big market for us, obviously, but Florida is not far behind, and a lot of people from New York actually moved to Florida.
Yes, including yourself.
Including myself, yes.
So you now live in Florida and New York before that, right?
Exactly,
correct?
yeah.
Yes.
I've been back and forth between New York and Florida,
New Yorker and Miami. Shocker. Welcome. So I read an interview where you said Carbone was your favorite Italian in New York. But in Miami, is there somewhere else that you found that you love Italian? Don't say Carbone.
An Italian restaurant in Miami, that's a good one. I haven't really. I'm going to take your advice on that because I know that you are very much, you know your.
Yeah, Macchialina.
Okay.
Erba, Fiola.
I love Fiola. Incredible, yes. I definitely love Fiola. I don't know the other two, so I'm going to need to explore that, yeah.
I read that and I said, no, not it was an old interview, but still.
This was probably old, and this was probably in New York more than...
it was a New York list. Yeah, that's where they asked you. They asked you everything. Brunch, favorite this, favorite that. You had to answer all sorts of things.
At least over 10 years.
My interview is much easier. How do you handle counterfeit bottles, or do you ever have to deal with that? Or is
not really.
No,
not really. Not to my knowledge, at least. Certainly not here, and even in Asia. To my knowledge, we didn't have to face this kind of situation. Luckily.
Yeah. What are the immediate goals for the domain and long-term goals?
Well, the immediate goal is to continue to produce, the best possible wine. There is one goal actually, which is to finish our cellars for Angélus. It's been a work for 3 years now,
listening to that.
And it's about to be completed. We had a crane in next to the chateau for a long time. It's just been removed a couple of weeks ago, so that's a good sign. So that's, I think, in the short term. I think in the long term is really the hope, at least, of Stéphanie de Boüard, is to be able to keep the chateau, within the family, having the next generation to be interested in, eventually taking over. She has some very young kids, so the question is absolutely not. There's a while before it can happen, but I think that's really the secretly or not so secretly, actually, her hope is that the next generation would be interested and one day hopefully take over, from her, like the way she did from her father.
And one of the reasons, going back to the crane, is you were saying something about the vats hanging from the ceiling.
Yes, it's true that the new cellar will be quite stunning. I haven't even seen them myself. I'm going to see them in a couple of months because it's just starting to happen, and they've been brought, to the chateau recently. But pretty much all the vats will be suspended. So when you can imagine that when you will walk in the cellars, instead of having vats on both sides, you will have to look up, and then you have all these vats suspended. So meaning that everything will be filled, from the top, will fall by gravitation. The pumping will, you don't need to do the pumping like the way it was done before. So it's not only aesthetic, but it also has some benefit in terms of, winemaking, to have more gentle extraction from the grapes, and always looking for more expressive aromatic, or more aromatic expression. The system has already been used for Carrion in 2019 with the new cellars, and now we're doing it also for Angélus. It's quite innovative in Bordeaux, in the world of wine, generally speaking.
Fascinating. I'm going to look forward to seeing the footage of that before I get there.
Yeah, that will be. I've seen only photos of it.
Okay.
But I know that now they've just been installed a couple of weeks ago, and I heard it's actually quite stunning. Yeah.
Okay. So favorite South Florida restaurants that you found while in Florida?
I like, maybe because that reminds me a little bit my French roots, but I really, I was mentioning before, I really like pastis. I like the outdoor. I like the simple food. It's not it's more like kind of a bistro food. But
You
I think
have that in New York.
We have it in New York too. It's very well made, and I truly enjoy it. And on top of it, they have a great wine list where they have, a number of vintages of Angélus. They also have Tempo, actually, which is interesting. And so I really like this restaurant, but there are many. I think Miami has evolved a lot, as you know,
It has, yeah.
in terms of dining experience, type of food, and nowadays you have many options where when 15 years ago it was a bit more limited, and now you have great quality food, much better service that you had before, and great experiences, generally speaking. So
Absolutely. I can vouch for that. Yves, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I think I know what I will be rushing home to enjoy tonight. Thank you, the listener, for tuning in and sharing your favorite episodes with your friends on social media. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Brenda.
No, thank you. Thank you.